Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters Podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. At 20:47 on a Tuesday evening, a single vehicle fire was reported in a multi-storey car park at Luton Airport. Routine job, maybe? Car fire, contained environment, nothing particularly out of the ordinary. If you saw that on a tip sheet, wouldn't necessarily raise your eyebrows. It's a car fire. But within hours, over 1,400 vehicles will be destroyed. A reinforced concrete structure will partially collapse, and one of the UK's busiest airports will grind to a halt. And here's the thing. Despite what many people might think about it reading in the news, this didn't even start with an electric vehicle. It started with a diesel. This episode is not particularly about a car fire. It's about how modern firefighting is changing, whether we like it or not. Because what we're looking at here is kind of a collision between modern fuel loads, modern environments, and very traditional assumptions about risk. In this episode, I'm going to try and walk us through the unpacking and breaking this incident down step by step. I'm going to walk through the timeline, we'll pause at some critical moments, and more importantly, we'll ask, where did this job actually change? Because it did. If you didn't recognize it early, you're already going to be behind it. So before we get into the details and drop into the debrief document itself, let's get into the timeline and let's understand the environment. So this is a multi-storey car park, open-sided, it's a concrete structure, high vehicle density, and there's a key point here that vehicles are parked extremely close together, roughly 300 mil apart. Now add in modern vehicles into that equation. We've got plastics, foams, synthetic materials, higher energy fuel systems, and these are not the cars that we're dealing with 20 years ago. It's not low energy fire load, if you will. This is compressed, highly reactive fuel package stacked in rows with built-in pathways for fire spread. And one more thing, open-sided doesn't necessarily mean safe. It means oxygen rich. At 20:47 on Tuesday, the 10th of October 2023, Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue received a 999 call alerting it to a car on fire in a third-floor terminal car park 2 at London Luton Airport. Opened at 2019 with 2,700 car parking spaces, the 5-storey car park was a steel frame structure with reinforced concrete floors and open sides, located close to the main terminal building at the UK's 5th busiest airport, publicly owned by Luton Borough Council. The fire originated in a privately owned car powered by a diesel-fueled internal combustion engine, with the cause of fire determined to be accidental. Now let's pause there. A diesel vehicle has caught fire. Think about this from a firefighter's perspective. You mobilize into this, you're thinking car fire, contained space, pretty manageable. You've probably been to dozens of them. And that's kind of the danger, because experience can create some assumptions. What have you been thinking when you're driving to that incident? Are you thinking quick knockdown? Are you thinking minimal escalation, low risk? Are you thinking there's going to be a riser in the car park somewhere? We'll tap into that. There's going to be smoke, but it's probably all just going to go out and up. Maybe we thought we're just going to deal with it quick. It's a very well-known area, it's a very well-known building. Surely, it's very safe. But modern vehicles behave differently. They burn hotter, they fail faster, and they involve more fuel a lot quicker, especially if you stack them next to each other. First 2 fire engines from Luton and Stopsley fire stations arrived at 20:55 and were met with a rapidly developing fire involving multiple vehicles now on the 3rd floor. The first appliance from the London Luton Airport Fire Service itself arrived on scene at 20:55 as well. Despite offensive firefighting operations being adopted by the first arriving firefighter crews, clear signs of imminent structural collapse were observed in the protected staircases. This led to the incident commander to order a tactical withdrawal of firefighters in the building, which was achieved by 21:26, and only external firefighting operations took place for the remainder of the whole incident. Again, let's break it down. The initial vehicle caught fire, but by the time they got there, it began to impact adjacent cars. Radiant heat, direct flame contact, and because of how closely these vehicles are parked, ignition starts happening very fast. We're now seeing that domino effect, additional vehicles becoming involved approximately every 30 to 40 seconds. Let that sink in. That is not a slow progression. That's exponential growth of this fire. We're working in collaboration with the Blue Light Show, a national conference and exhibition built around one thing. Blue light services do better together than apart. I'm going to be there 1st and 2nd of July 2026 at the event, getting involved with those conversations and connecting with people who really care about doing the job better across the blue light sector. I'll see you there. Luckily, no members of the public were injured during the incident. 4 firefighters were, though, and 2 were treated for heat and exhaustion, with 2 for smoke inhalation. An employee of the agency operating at the airport was also treated for smoke inhalation. Think closely about how that happened, because as more vehicles became involved, burning fuel most likely began to run off petrol, diesel, other combustibles. This fuel doesn't stay where it started, it travels. Maybe it enters drainage systems, it flows across floors, it drops down levels below. And because of that, the fire is no longer where you think it is. It's spreading. Maybe it's beneath you, maybe it's below you, maybe it's going across the floors. It's moving laterally and vertically at the same time. And unless you recognize that early, you're chasing a fire that's already ahead of you. The fire spread to involve 1,352 cars in total and led to the partial collapse of the structure, which was deemed unsafe and fully demolished following the fire. Now, there was 3 key phases of tactics that were used to tackle this fire. In phase 1, in the debrief, they describe it as the initial attack with crews committed internally to the car park. Phase 2 was defensive firefighting, and that was to contain the fire to the 3rd floor. And phase 3, defensive firefighting with the aim of containing the fire within the entire car park and preventing it from spreading to nearby aircraft and adjacent structures. What would you have thought? Turning up. Because the fire's spreading and it doesn't need permission to spread. It's going to use fuel, it's going to use air, it's going to use different pathways, and in that case, the building itself is actually helping it. Would you have done any different? At what point would you have recognised this is no longer a car fire? I've been to a lot of jobs, I think of thatch jobs and other things like that, which have a similar domino effect, that it looks manageable until it isn't. And the problem is that shift doesn't come with some kind of announcement. There's no moment where the fire politely tells you, by the way, I'm now out of control. It just happens. Quietly at first, perhaps, and then all at once. At different points in the incident, especially in the early stages, multiple vehicles got involved. I've already said the fire spreading across the levels and the environment's now fully contributing to the fire growth. During the first phase of the incident, Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Service committed crews wearing breathing apparatus to the car park via the northwest stairwell. Water was supplied by the airport fire service with, yes, the dry riser that was in place. And they also attacked the fire externally using a high-reach extendable turret. The first BA team went under air at approximately 21:10, and by 21:26, all the crews had been withdrawn from the building as the signs of potential dangerous collapse had been recognised by firefighters working in the northwest staircase. That's 16 minutes. 16 minutes. They'd gone in, things had deteriorated, they'd recognised signs of collapse, and they'd withdrawn. During this initial phase of the incident, additional resources were requested, but the incident was made up to 10 pumps and 2 aero platforms, and we still lost the building. Following the withdrawal of BA crews, the incident moved to the second phase, which had a tactical aim of containing the fire to the 3rd floor, and sectorisation of the incident was implemented. During this phase, an additional aero ladder, a high-volume pump, and 2 water carriers were requested. The fire was declared a major incident at 21:37. Again, that's just 27 minutes after the first BA team have gone in. And during this second phase, an individual was spotted in car park 2 and was rescued. The individual worked in the terminal building, but was not an employee of the airport, and had entered the building approximately 1 hour after the start of the incident, and had used their status as an airport worker to gain access to the building in an attempt to move their own car. Not totally unlikely, and that sort of thing we've got to anticipate. People are going to do that. They want to save their own vehicle. I want to pause here because I know I'm getting excited because it's a really, really interesting incident, but all of these are done with the aid of these debrief documents in reflection. We're not talking about knowing we'd have done better and we'd have done better and we're better, but there is an illusion of control, and it's where all of us, including me, can get caught out because you've got crews in, you've got jets on, you've got water on the fire, there's visible effort, people are doing things, it feels like control sometimes. But the materials, the structure, the fire, doesn't care how busy you are, if the conditions aren't right, it will continue to grow regardless. And in the early stages of this, it wasn't particularly just a firefighting problem, it's now a larger, much larger incident management problem. Fire had already been spreading across multiple levels. As I've said, structural elements were being exposed to sustained heat, and we'd seen they were showing signs of collapse. The temptation is maybe push harder, maybe commit more crews, maybe try and regain control, but that's exactly where risk can spike. And Probably a fantastic shout, from the incident commander. No firefighters suffered a fatality during this incident because decision to withdraw was made. It was about 2 hours-ish into the incident when the structure began to fail. Concrete elements were compromised, sections of the car park started to collapse. Now, this is reinforced concrete. It's not a lightweight construction, and still, failure occurs. At approximately 22:30, the incident commander switched their firefighting strategy to the third phase. This was defensive firefighting, and the aim was containing the fire within the car park and preventing it from spreading to nearby aircraft to the east side of the adjacent structures of Terminal Car Park 1, the newly opened Direct Air Rail Transit DART station. That was on the north side. A further make-up for resources was made at 22:57 with make pumps 15. Firefighting continued throughout the night, and by 5:28 in the morning of Wednesday, 11th of October, the incident had been reduced just to 6 rescue crews, and there was still 1 ALP in attendance as well. But by 7:29, all live sectors were damping down hotspots, and by 9:13, all firefighting operations had ceased, with crews just monitoring for hotspots like we do at all of these incidents. It's so worth giving acknowledgement to the great decisions that were made, despite the context and despite what happened afterwards and all the media publication and all that jazz. Critical decision had to be made. The fireground fundamentally changed, and we went from offensive firefighting in its traditional sense to really hazard management. You've got crews operating inside or close to this environment. Think about it as the incident commander is there. Things could go catastrophically wrong here. Think about a structural collapse. Think about firefighters inside buried beneath that concrete. This incident by that stage was going to be big no matter what. Over 1,300 vehicles, or 1,400 I think in total, got destroyed. Major infrastructure loss, airport disruption, thousands of passengers affected. It had a national impact. Transport disruption, economical consequences, operational strain, way beyond the fireground. The fire in Terminal Car Park 2 is not the first major fire in a multi-storey car park, and it's unlikely to be the last. Fire spread quickly to several vehicles, and a combination of the wind spreading the fire through the open-sided car park, the impact of running fuel fires, and the early onset of signs of structural collapse all prevented internal offensive firefighting from continuing and contributed to the significant scale of the fire and subsequent financial loss. Given the significant structural collapse that occurred, the early recognition of the risk of collapse and the subsequent tactical withdrawal of firefighters definitely helped prevent any serious injury or loss of life. A significant number of cars within Car Park 2 were left visibly undamaged, and the adjacent DART station and Car Park 1 building were successfully protected, including nearby aircraft. Through the incident, the fire service worked really, really well with its partners, including London Luton Airport, and there was a real focus on the economical impact of the airport remaining closed. Sounds crazy, but as a result of the collective efforts of all the partners, flights were actually able to resume from 3 p.m. the next day on the Wednesday, 11th of October. Way back at the time of construction of Terminal 2, both the local and national guidance for multi-storey car parks was based on a legislative requirement for life safety. The fire safety requirements set out in Approved Document B, which is Volume 2, Buildings and Other Dwellings, 2013, something like that. All the FP guys and girls will know what it is. That's for open-sided car parks, and it included heat and smoke management measures only. Consequently, Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Service didn't recommend the installation of AWSS in Terminal Car Park 2. That's automatic water suppression systems. However, the academic research and the outcomes and reviews into fires occurring within these multi-storey car parks across the globe in the last decade had led to an increased awareness of the risk posed by these structures and the vehicles stored within them. For example, current designs don't take into consideration the fire load in modern vehicles, as I've already spoke about, especially things like electric vehicles with liquefied petroleum gas vehicles as well across our roads, as well as the risk of running fuel fires from plastic fuel tanks. And there's been a few instances of fatalities in car parks, and there's been recorded fatalities to firefighters abroad due to structural collapse. There's quite a few cases now, an unfortunate amount really, of firefighter injuries within the UK while attending car park fires. Furthermore, evidence derived from global research and research conducted by the Building Research Establishment, BRE, demonstrates the effectiveness of sprinklers in controlled fires in car parks, just like this one. It shows the incidence of fatalities and injuries is 0, and the property loss is about 95% lower than that of an uncontrolled fire. So, AWSS, automatic water suppression systems within enclosed car parks, are common in Europe and also recommended by the National Fire Protection Association Standard 88, that's NFPA 88, which is what they follow in the USA. The independent review of building regulations of fire safety led by Dame Judith Hackett, someone we've tried to get on the podcast a few times, she did this in 2018, found the regulatory system for buildings in England is not fit for purpose. By the way, if anybody knows Dame Judith Hackett, please give her a nudge. We'd love to have her on.
I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
There's been numerous major fires where the rate and scale of fire spread appears to have been linked to the construction of the building, which has highlighted the need for strengthened fire safety requirements in buildings in England. The National Fire Chiefs Council, they have subsequently updated their position with a statement and associated guidance around automatic water suppression systems. They did that in December 2020 and most recently in May of 24, as well as causing for more research to be undertaken, particularly given the recent increase in vehicle powered by emerging technologies that we've already spoken about. Also continues to lobby for legislative change to make this provision of automatic water suppression systems in certain high-risk buildings a mandatory requirement. Bedfordshire, where this incident happened, they're aligned to the NFCC's view around automatic water suppression systems. They say they're the most effective way to ensure fires are suppressed or even extinguished before the fire and rescue service even have to come and do the thing. Bedfordshire's recommended the installation of these in multi-storey car parks since 2019 during the planning consultation phase and since 2022 during the building regulations consultation phase. Our FP guys and girls do a heck of a lot of work making these recommendations, but unfortunately they are only recommendations. Bedfordshire also supports the NFCC in lobbying for the change in national guidance and legislation to make the provision for fire suppression systems such as sprinklers a requirement in new build open-sided multi-storey car parks. No surprise, given this incident just adds more weight to the argument. However, in January 2024, the Chief Fire Officer wrote to the operator of London Luton Airport. They are operators. They're the people that make the pennies, selling all of our flights around the world, and the Chief Exec of Luton Borough Council as well. They were strongly recommending that the appropriate AWSS be included in the design of any new or replacement multi-storey car parks, and that serious consideration be given to retrofitting these into other existing buildings. We'll have to wait to see if that actually happens. I want to use this part of the incident to reflect back and just give you some key details on some bits right in the beginning of it, because at 20:42 on that Tuesday, CCTV captures the red Range Rover Sport arriving at the ticket barrier. That was in Terminal Car Park 2. Vehicle stops at the barrier and there's already light smoke can be seen issuing from the vehicle. But hey, we'll keep going anyway. Smoke is light in colour and is issuing from the near side of the engine compartment. The vehicle proceeds through the barrier and continues to drive internally to the third floor, where the driver notices visible flames from the front of his vehicle and thinks, we'll bring it to a stop. Makes sense? 5 minutes after the Range Rover enters, Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Services Control received that initial call to the car on fire on the third floor of the multi-storey car park. The service actually responded with its predetermined attendants, 2 pumps, 08 Papa 1 and 12 Papa 1. And they're actually supported by a drone, with both rescue pumps booking in attendance 2057, so it was a quick turnout. So at 20:47, they got the call. 10 minutes later, they book in attendance. And around 30 minutes after that, they get the informative message, stating that approximately 25 cars are involved in fire, and 80% of the third floor is involved in fire, and a major incident declared. There's a few things I want to go deeper on in terms of the tactics that were used. So let's cycle back and pull direct from the debrief for a critical few points on the tactics. They put these as observations and recommendations in the debrief report. So on the initial arrival, again, 2057, Bedfordshire attempted to attack the fire from the northwest stairwell. However, it wasn't actually possible to open the door to the stairwell from the outside without a key. So the crew commander was informed by Luton Airport staff that the airport's fire crews on the northwest stairwell had already secured a water source, which was supplying an appliance which in turn was ready to supply the dry riser. Due to the need of implementing a rapid intervention, the crew manager decided to change their tactical plan and use the northwest tower, the stairwell inside that, with crews briefed to move to that new location. They actually decided, which most of us probably would as well, to implement similar tactics to what would normally be implemented at a high-rise tower block. So multiple jets for fire attack and safe systems work. Alpha Team 1 attacked via the fire floor, so that's the third floor, and they went directly from the northwest stairwell to attack the fire. Alpha Team 2 actually entered the car park on the second floor with the intention of accessing the third floor via the ramp where vehicles would go up, and the intention of this was to attempt to suppress the fire in the northern section of the car park whilst providing support and safety for Alpha Team 1. As they're making the way up the vehicle ramp from the second floor to the third floor, Alpha Team 2 actually observed that fire was spreading to the second floor as well due to running fuel, as I've already spoken about, and they retreated to extinguish this fire. One of the firefighters stated, "I was able to contain the fire using a jet, which stopped the spread. However, I couldn't fully extinguish it, as soon as they stopped applying water, reignition was instant." At about the same sort of time, the watch commander radioed the group commander and said that internally the incident was escalating and there was signs of internal structural damage with the stairwell and concrete floor. Based on the information, that was then the group commander's decision to evacuate all crews from internal firefighting and reassess the tactics. The initial approach, the initial attack itself, was similar to the approach that was taken by Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service at 2017 in King's Dock multi-storey car park. King's Dock car park, similar to Terminal Car Park 2, was built using approved Document B guidance. This document bases its understanding of cars in a fire on studies in the post-war era, when cars were simpler construction. Research undertaken by Merseyside themselves as well stated that today, vehicles are manufactured using plastics, polycarbonates, and composite materials. As we all know, they've got air conditioning, they've got detonator airbags, they've got a much greater fuel capacity. And the vehicles are generally larger. We've got SUVs, 4x4s, all this stuff has come in since the post-war era. Studies confirm that vehicles aligned into rows will produce a greater heat output than singular vehicles. Who'd have thunk it? Vehicles in a row will put out a greater level of heat than one that's just on its own. One vehicle, for context, produces up to about 5 megawatts of energy, but two vehicles close together might produce 16 to 20 megawatts. That's that compounding effect. And that's due to the reflected heat and lack of ventilation between the vehicles. Bit of water, extinguishment, energy, heat capacity stuff for you. Merseyside have actually stated that their main branches' heat absorption capabilities range from about 20 to 27 megajoules per second. Initial crews reported up to 10 vehicles involved, which, if you do the math, would release well in excess of 100 millijoules per second of energy. In that scenario, you'd actually need a minimum of about 5 to 6 main branches. Put that out. On top of that, a standard dry riser has a diameter of about 150 millimeters, well, usually exactly 150 mil, with the capacity to supply 3 main jets. That's actually something a lot of people don't know. Just if you want to mention that to people in your service, that a standard dry riser will supply 3 main jets. Therefore, the capacity of an individual riser is actually inadequate to attack a fire of this combined size and energy output, along with the radiated heat transfer to other vehicles and surrounding structure. I wanted to pull that bit out because I think it's really, really, really important for us to have a little bit more of a think about how much knowledge and awareness we do about things like tactical flow rates, heat release rates. Because in this example, modern vehicle fires now are not really small. A single car fire there, as we've said, can produce around 5 megawatts of heat. But when vehicles are stored close together, that really changes. And you should be thinking about that when we think about the context of megawatts for a compartment fire or for an entire floor. Every main jet has a limit to how much heat it can absorb. As Merseyside have in the research on this bit here, for them it's around 20 to 27 megawatts, which might be fine if the riser is put inside a building where we're using it to put out a compartment. But if we're putting it in a car park, a multi-storey car park, then the infrastructure doesn't support it. Standard riser can only support around 3 main jets. So your water supply is underpowered from the start. Have a look in your own service. Have a look at your training library and ask yourself, do we spend enough time teaching about heat release rates? Do we talk about megawatts? Do we talk about energy transfer, megajoules per second? And do we think about matching flow rate to the actual fire size? Instead, are we teaching put the wet stuff on the hot stuff? Okay, yep, that works to an extent. All the fires go out eventually. But should we be teaching, can your water application actually overpower the fire? If your flow rate doesn't match what the fire's energy output is, you're not fighting the fire. You're probably just cooling the edges of it and babysitting whilst it goes through its own fire curve and moves into decay.
It is beyond a privilege to be able to bring the Firefighters podcast to you, and we are so grateful for every single person that supports, listens, shares, and follows our journey. And to help us keep doing it, create more, reach more guests internationally, and make the podcast sustainable, we're asking for you to help. And to do this, we've set up a Patreon page. By joining our Patreon community, you will get access to every single full episode archive we have ever made. Now, hundreds and hundreds of key documents that we've got in there on fire behaviour, firefighter health, cancer risks, incident debriefs, and so much more. So if you feel like you want to join the Patreon crew and help us make this possible, head to patreon.com/TFFPC or check the link in any episode podcast notes.
Now, because of the structural collapse signs and all that sort of jazz, the information that was identified by Merseyside Fire and Rescue Service in their report in relation to fire spread and water supply, the tactical decisions made by the incident commanders were appropriate and timely, but they weren't necessarily made totally on the grounds of we haven't got enough water. They were made on the grounds of building might collapse. The actions of the airport fire crews in establishing the water supplies within the dry riser in the northwest stairwell definitely assisted Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Service in attacking the fire internally as soon as possible. Great work, double thumbs up. But even if they hadn't have had the early signs of structural collapse that hampered both Bedfordshire and the airport fire crews with their tactical plans for extinguishing the fire, would they have even had enough water? We did acknowledge that we needed aerial appliances in the early stages of that incident. We mobilised more. We knew we needed it. Unfortunately, in this particular instance, the closest aerial ladder platform for Bedfordshire was at Luton and it was unavailable due to maintenance. Fire control mobilised the next nearest adset, which was Bedford, rather than the next nearest aerial appliance, which would have actually come from Hertfordshire. There is a proposal in there that Fire Control review the PDA's proposed biomobilising systems to ensure the closest geographically available appliances are proposed irrespective of whether or not they're over the border. However, big shout out to our Fire Control peeps. They are incredible and their knowledge is very, very good. And I don't want to pull that one out of there just to say, hey, Fire Control, do a better job. They're fantastic. From an incident command perspective, level of command during the entire incident was in line with the service's policy. However, there is an observation, action recommendation that the policy has not been fully aligned to the latest national operational guidance. Still, I think from an incident command perspective, the level probably wouldn't have made a dramatic difference, but there is a recommendation that the service review their incident command policy and ensure alignment with NOG, which they have done since. There was several strategic officers deployed to the incident, and it was justifiable due to the nature of the incident, the location, and the potential political implications of that major incident. There was also some additional resilience provided. They got in touch with the assistant chief fire officer, who actually didn't attend, which is fine, but was, of course, available for any other strategic roles. But even if we'd have had every single officer in Bedfordshire attend, and everybody else, and me, like that had made any difference, it wouldn't have made any difference whatsoever. We have to ask ourselves, with that knowledge gap around fire growth, heat release rates, how long has that been a knowledge gap? Is it a massive knowledge gap? I don't know. When you're listening to this, I don't think I was taught anything about it for the first 15 years of my career till I started going out and reading stuff and looking at stuff myself. It's not actually new knowledge. We've understood the relationship between fire size, heat release rates, and the required extinguishing media for probably decades. If you look back in the science, 1950s, 1970s, early fire research starts quantifying heat release rates and fire growth. In the 80s and 90s, we had fire engineering developing properly. We began understanding energy output in things like megawatts. And 2000s and onwards, which I joined 2008, there's massive advancements in fire dynamics, compartment fire behaviour, water application effectiveness. It's not cutting edge anymore. It really is established science, but the gap is still there, and it's not necessarily in the knowledge. Maybe it's in the translation to the fireground. We know, sort of finger on the pulse viscerally, bigger fires need higher flow rates, although people might just say higher volumes of water. But water application must match energy output, and fire behaviour at this point really is quite predictable when it's understood. But operationally, how do we make it useful? Do we still default to get a jet in, give me big water, whatever that means, and that'll probably knock it back. And even when this research started, the 50s, 70s, stuff that we're trying to build on, Paul Grimwood's work and loads of fire engineering and the IFE and all of these people, even when that was done, fires were smaller, fuel loads were lower, buildings behaved differently. But modern fires are faster, hotter, more fuel dense, more interconnected. And we're really starting to expose that gap that maybe there's generations of firefighters that didn't have familiarization with this. Should we be training our firefighters way more now to think in terms of energy transfer, megawatts, flow rates? Because if you can translate that effectively in the moment, which is beyond difficult, and I'm not pretending I'll be able to do it every time, because this stuff it's a high cognitive output if it's not already embedded for you. Because when you're doing a 360, when you're looking at a fire, are you asking yourself real questions backed by research, science, and embedded in training about how big is this fire really? How fast is it growing? Can our current flow rate overpower it? Would we even know the answer? But if we did know the answer and the answer was no, then you've got to change your tactics early. We've understood fire behaviour and water application for decades in the wider academia and research and books. But somewhere along the way, that knowledge didn't fully make the leap. It didn't cross the chasm into fireground training for firefighters in the vast majority of services here in the UK. So it never made it onto the fireground. And it doesn't get taught most places in incident command either. Not because they don't know it or they're stupid or anything like that. Incident command trainers are fantastic. I've been privileged to be trained by some incredible incident command trainers that know a hell of a lot about decision control processes and decision vortexes and decision fatigue and spans of control and cognitive overload and all of these fantastic things. But we're not teaching fire behavior and water application in incident command particularly. So when do we cross that gap? How do we bring that back in? It's not going to happen quick, but it probably does need to happen. We can't rely on people going and pulling out documents and doing their own bit of research and going, well, that's what a professional firefighter would do. Okay, but if the service isn't training you to read this stuff and saying you don't need to know it, then we can't just hope people are going to learn it themselves. Hope is not a strategy. This was a big, interesting incident. The debrief document is available for you. You can go and download it for free. There's a link underneath this for you to do so. It's about 110 pages. And people that belong to Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Service, I'm sure would bang their head against the wall going, how come you didn't say this? How come you didn't say that? Guys, girls, there's a lot of stuff in there. And we're just trying to keep it useful, tactical, and maybe encourage people to have a greater understanding of the context and the complexity of the incident. I wasn't there, and I'm sure it would have equally gone in one way or another. And you know what? Perhaps I'd have just done exactly the same. Who knows? You know, we're not armchair experts sitting back here pretending we'd have known more, done better, or anything like that. But it's so good to go and read this stuff. And if you're not going to read it, maybe just listen back to this again. Because this fire just originated in a red 2014 Range Rover Sport, had a diesel engine, and in the fire investigator's expert opinion, taking into consideration all the facts at the time of the fire scene investigation, it was accidental ignition. It was due to an electrical fault or a component failure. The developing fire that spread to other components, including plastics in the engine compartment and the oil and the fuel. Wind on the night itself, approximately 10 miles an hour, southwesterly direction. It was open-sided, which obviously enabled fans to be flamed directed towards adjacent vehicles, increasing the speed of fire development. It was set up for success in terms of the fire winning, and it did. It was running fuel fires. Nightmare. And after the fact, there was a lot of speculation about the impact of electrical vehicles. The immediate aftermath of the incident, there was considerable speculation in the press, social media, that the fire originated in an electric vehicle. It was despite statements literally at the time from Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Service stating that the fire service believed the vehicle was a diesel vehicle and there was CCTV of it. And it's been confirmed in the fire investigation report. But it doesn't stop a good story getting out there. The one that we spoke about earlier, 2017, the King's Dock multi-storey car park in Liverpool, that was a petrol engine. It was more likely that the fire started accidentally as well, due to, again, electrical fault or component failure. There was actually another one in January 2020. It was a similar fire, multi-storey car park, Stavanger Airport in Norway, which led to the collapse of the car park as well. In that one, in Stavanger, they said the strong wind helped accelerate the fire spread. The leakage of fuel from burning vehicles contributed to fire spreading. And no matter which way you turn it, spin it, flip it on its head and try to unpick it, the scale of this fire in Terminal Car Park 2 at Luton, London Airport presented a significant challenge to all the responding crews. The fire spread so quickly to multiple vehicles, and a combination of the wind speed through the open-sided car park, the running fuel, the inclines, it was going to result in the loss of this car park. It was an impossible challenge for the crews. As with any major incident, there are always many areas. There's several areas of learning which were outlined in the report, which again you can get below if you want to go and click on it, download that one. All of the crews worked so damn hard. We had crews from Bedfordshire, Hertfordshire, London, Buckinghamshire, Cambridgeshire, Northamptonshire, and of course, London Luton Airport. They worked so hard to tackle the fire. Initial attending crews from Bedfordshire were quickly recognising warning signs of building collapse. Successful evacuation. That recognition of that, significant early potential for structural collapse definitely, almost certainly saved lives. And they did contain the fire to Car Park 2. They protected neighbouring infrastructure, the Dart building, Car Park 1 we've spoken about before. But these types of vehicle fires in multi-storey car park facilities have been reported so many times now in local, national, international media. 2024, King Edward Court, Windsor. Old Orchard Road Car Park in Poole in 2024. The Meal Brace Retail Park, Shrewsbury, 2024. Car Park near Lisbon, Humberto Delgado Airport in Portugal, 2024. All requiring so many resources. There was another one in Nottingham in 2024. There was a long stay car park in Gatwick in 2024. Bristol Airport in 23, Glasgow Airport in 23, Birmingham in 2023. There's so many of these. Honestly, the list just goes on if you look in the debrief. So, in closing, when you step back from this incident, it wasn't actually a freak event. This is where the job is going. There's lots of examples for it. More fuel, more energy, faster escalations. And the fires we're turning out to now, they're not the same as the fires many of us built our experience on, and also not necessarily the fires where a lot of this research was done. So it's not really just about sitting here and asking ourselves, what went wrong at Luton? Why did they get it all wrong? Because that's too easy. And, we weren't there. I wasn't there. The better question and the more honest one is, what are we going to do differently when we see this again? Because we will. And the next time, it'll look just as routine at the start. I'll bet it will. I think it's really important to say that everything we've talked about here, the timeline, the learning, the insight, that comes from a lot of work being done by a lot of people, not me, fire investigators, operational crews, fire and rescue services who have taken the time to properly document and review and share what happened. There's 110 pages in this document, and I've not read them all. Bedfordshire Fire and Rescue Service put it together, and they did an incredible job. It takes a hell of a lot of effort, and more importantly, it takes the willingness to be open, to be scrutinised, to let others learn from it. So there's a lot of credit owed there, because without all of that, we don't do any debriefs, and also we don't get any better. But what do we do with it? That bit is on us. It's on me. It's on you. Maybe you're listening on the way to work. Maybe you're listening around a watch table. Because that is a really good watch table discussion. That's the jewels. That's the quiet moments when you stop and think, well, would I have seen that coming? Would I have recognised that shift in the fire? Would I have done any different? Because the fireground won't give you time to figure it out when you're in it. That thinking has to happen before, has to happen now. So take that away. Talk about it. Challenge each other on it. Pull it apart. And the next time you turn out to what looks like a simple job, just pause and think for a second and ask yourself, what could this become in the next 10 minutes? That was the debrief for the London Luton Airport Terminal Car Park fire in Car Park 2, Tuesday, 10th of October, 2023. I'll see you next time.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Hope you took a lot away from that episode. We started the Firefighters podcast to develop, inspire, connect, motivate, represent, and most importantly, celebrate the world of incredible emergency services operators and the wider sector through this series of wide-ranging conversations. We really love creating this podcast and bringing it to so many people. Did you know you can also find these on YouTube? We do a lot of video podcasts now. You can head over to our YouTube page and follow, subscribe there. And as a final ask from us, whatever platform you're on, please rate the podcast. It really helps us as a key performance indicator to reach more and more people. I've been your host, Pete Wakefield. This has been the Firefighters Podcast. And wherever you are in the world, please stay safe, be happy, and where possible, please remember and support your firefighters and first responders. I'll see you next time.